Hey everybody, welcome back to Despia. Of course, I was gonna make this profile because for once in my miserable Yu-Gi-Oh career, I was able to actually top for once, and Despia of all things did it. So of course, I'm going to show what I am running for that because it's just so much fun to be able to do this. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. My matchup lineup was actually kind of diverse this time. Round one was Flunder. I was able to win that. Admittedly by the skin of my teeth and by getting lucky and drawing my side cards. Game one, I just lost right away, so I scooped without even showing them when I was on. So game two, I won because they sided in pretty bad and I saw my side cards. And in game three, I saw my side cards again, so I won. Admittedly, I got kind of lucky there. So yeah, that's about how that went down. Match two, I lost. That was against Invoked. I just got out-resourced. They were more consistent than me. They stopped what I was doing, and I stopped enough of what they were doing, but I just got out-grinded because, go figure, Invoked is pretty consistent. Game three was against Pendulum Magician. Game one, I lost kind of quickly. They won the die roll, and I just got out-resourced. They made a board. I didn't have enough hand traps to stop them. Game two and three were kind of close, but I was able to out-resource them. And I don't know if side cards ended up coming in as handy, but Tikaboo is a hell of a card, which my deck doesn't care about as much as his, so go figure. And then game four was against Traptrix. That was miserable, but we barely managed to scrape out victory. So game one, I lost pretty quickly because back row matchups just kill this deck, so I had to scoop without, thankfully, without showing them what I was on, so they kind of sided pretty bad, which kind of helped out. Game two, I had enough back row hate, and I was able to get my board established and then just outgrind them. And then game three was the most miserable thing that ever happened to me. I ended up to a point where I burned them enough with Masqarade Dragon, and then I had the third Mystic Mine dropped on me. I was able to out the other two, and then the third Mystic Mine was dropped on me, and then I just won in time because I had more life points and we were down to the wire at that point. So, yeah, that's you know, sometimes it just happens like that, but I mean, it happened. I was able to top with it, so that's all I really care about right now. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into what I was running with this. First of all, any build of Despia, you should be playing 3 Owlbear. I understand that this card is getting expensive, but there really is no replacement for Owlbear because it gets you any branded spell and traps, so sucks that it's expensive, but I really highly recommend getting 3 Owlbear if you are able to get into it because you need it to if you're going to play Despia. 2 Dramaturge. Unless you're playing pure, you don't really need to be playing 3. There are some builds only playing 1, but in this particular build, I'm playing 2 because it's really, really handy to see. It's a Despia name. It comes back, so you're able to do some more fusion shenanigans. And the goal of this deck is basically to try and turbo out as many Masqarade Dragons as possible. So seeing as many Despia names as you can and having some of them that come back to fuse again is just really handy. So that's why we are using 2 of those. The 1, Ad Libitum, this is a 1-of in the deck. You don't really need to play more than this. This is just handy for getting stuff back once you're already established. You search this later in the combo, and then it can reborn one of your Despias that's in the grave or that's banished, so it helps get you more material. And its other effect to gain attack does come up sometimes, but you really just want this for more fusion material more than anything else. And then finally, the 3 Despian Tragedy, hidden star of the deck. This gets you into more Despias. You just get insane value off of this card. And then the 1 Foolish Burial as the honorary 4th copy. If I had more space, I would also run Gold Sark so that you have more copies of Tragedy, because Tragedy is just insane as far as getting you cards and monsters to your hand. It's just really, really nice and helps fix your hand sometimes if you end up in a rough spot. But that is the main board of monsters that we are playing in Despia. These ratios worked out. I don't have an issue with these whatsoever. Any problems I had wasn't because of the monster ratios. I could maybe do some tweaking, but I mean that ended up working out just fine. Spells and traps. I said it in every single other Despia video I do. You must play 3 branded opening if you are going to play this deck. There is no room for anything else. I understand this card is getting up there. Last I checked, it was at $5. Funny enough, I got this card when it was like 30 cents, so the fact that it's jumped up by that much is hilarious. So I understand this card is getting up there as well, but you must play 3. There really isn't a substitute for it. in this deck. It's just insane to be able to do it. In this particular build, you do play 3 Branded in red because your goal is to fuse as much as possible if you were trying to get 3 Masqarade Dragon on the field, because Masqarade Dragon is hilarious. So you do need access to this. Seeing this in your starting hand, if you have the proper setup, is not bad whatsoever. In fact, that's kind of what saves you most of the time, being able to get more material and fuse again, so it really ends up coming in handy. And then same thing, only 2 of the field spell. You can search it. You do want to fuse as much as you can with this deck, but I mean, 2 is still just the correct ratio, whether you see it or whether you search it later on. You know, I didn't have an issue with any of these ratios. So you do brick sometimes with some of these hands, but that's very rarely. You're going to be able to go into at least something with this. The spell ratio wasn't the issue for me in any of that. The other thing that we run to help us fuse better is a Frightfur package. So we run 3 Edge Imp Chain, 3 Frightfur Patchwork, and 2 Polymerization. This, you play this if your goal is just to fuse more, which turboing out 3 Masqarade Dragon is a pretty funny way of fusing more and does end up happening a lot. So the Frightfur package was really, really funny, and I'm kind of glad I played it. I don't necessarily think this is the best version, even though ironically this is the one I topped with, you know, when I was playing any other version of the deck. As of now, pre-branded fusion, I do think that splashing in Shaddoll or Dogmatica may work out better with this deck. But once we get branded fusion, then obviously the Albaz variant will be the best version. But the Frightfur package is hilarious. Being able to fuse more, getting into your Masqarade Dragons and your Querituses more easily, and you just get so much value off of this. If you're able to, if you have one of these in your hand and not any of these, you fuse with this, and then you get this, and then you use this to get 2 more of these. Also being able to do things with the Owlbear, like if you fuse with a Tragedy to get Owlbear to your hand, and if you haven't normal summoned that turn, then you can just normal summon Owlbear. The value you can get off of some of these combo lines is just insane when you play this, because these cards are like, this card is nuts. This either forces an Ash or you're just off to the races with this. And then just the sheer value that you get off of these is crazy. Like, playing this is really, really funny whenever you're able to get it rolling. And then the other poly card that we play, of course, 3 super poly. That's pretty much the goal of this deck. There are situations where you can fuse with your own board with this, funny enough. I really don't think fusing with your opponent's board is the greatest right now, depending on your matchup, because you don't really play as many super poly targets in this. I mean, even if you're playing the Albaz variants, then it doesn't really come up as much. But I mean, super poly is still a hell of a card. When it comes up, it can just win you the game and clear your opponent's boards on its own. It did end up coming up in the Invoked matchup. I just never saw it, unfortunately, which would have been great. But you know, you play cards as 3 of sometimes, and then you just don't even see them. But it happens. So obviously still an insane card, but obviously very matchup dependent, and the only matchup it really ended up coming up against in my local that time would be Invoked. I just didn't happen to see it. And then the rest of the hand traps and tech that I am playing, 3 Nibiru still, because it's a light. Nibiru is insane this format. This saved my ass so many times in a lot of my matchups, and if I didn't need it, you know, just side it out for better stuff. The 1 Cosmic, that's all I have space for, and that's all you really need if you're worried about things like Mystic Mine, which against Trap Tricks, this saved my ass in that. It helped me out. I ended up having to go up against all 3 Mystic Mines in that matchup. The Cyclone out of the first one, the Phoenix out of the second one, and then the third one I was just up on life points, so I won. It comes up, if you're going to play an out to Mystic Mine, then don't run, obviously this deck can't run things like Order, so just don't do that. And then Cosmic is just better anyway because, you know, good going first or second. And then Feather Duster, I mean, Feather Duster's nice, but again, that's only really good going second in the purest form. So Cosmic just gets the job done. 1 Call by the Grave. We don't like hand traps. This card is insane. It's at 1 for a reason. 3 Imperm, because Imperm is one of the better hand traps of this format, and it is ridiculous. And of course, 3 Tikaboo, because it is one of the best floodgates that you can play this format. Obviously, you can't go into multiple fusions or multiple Despias with this, but as long as you are stopping your opponent and it's hurting them more than it's hurting you, you really don't care. I can't tell you how many times this card saved my life. This card shits on Flunder, it shits on Sword Soul. Most of the Pendulum Magicians are spellcasters, so I was able to stop a lot of the plays with that. it just comes in so handy whenever you're able to see that card. So I would not change that whatsoever. That is the main deck. That is 40 cards. Yeah, I know, go figure. I was finally able to keep it down to 40 cards, right? Some of it is just matchup dependent. If you want to cut or change any of that, then feel free. But I mean, I tried to main and side for my local, and it ended up working out pretty well. Anything I didn't need, I sided out, and the side worked out really well also. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily change any of that. I might tweak with some of it a little bit, see what else I can do with it. But overall, I was pretty happy with that. Extra deck. The main gimmick of this deck is, of course, Masqarade Dragons, so we play 3 of those because we are trying to turbo out all 3. This card is hilarious. Pay 600 life points as cost for your opponent to activate cards and effects, and it can just come back. Fun fact, when your opponent doesn't know that this card doesn't do the burn when it comes back, you make them freak out about it and negate it so that they don't have to deal with it. And yeah, you force out negation with that, and it's really, really funny. Plus, it's a rank 8, so, free rank 8 material for funny things, and it's hilarious. This is still Despia, so you want to play the other Despia stuff. 2 Queritus, I wouldn't change that whatsoever. Queritus was also another hidden star today. It won me some games. In Pendulum Magician, after he went through his Zeus activations, which was annoying to deal with, you just drop this, you make it 0, and then you just swing for game because you're able to get a bunch of bodies onto the field. It is funny, and Queritus is MVP of this. I mean, several cards are MVP. Masqarade Dragon getting your opponent down in life is hilarious, but then Queritus just comes in and wins the game for you. It's really, really great. I did not make Proskinian once throughout the tournament, but there were some situations where if I were able to go into it, I would have won. I just got out-resourced and didn't see the proper name at the proper time. I saw it later, but then it wouldn't end up mattering in that situation. But, it comes up, and then if you're able to go into it, you just get crazy value and damage off of it, so I wouldn't change that. Just having Proskinian as an option is really nice. If you want to cut it and change it to something else, you can, but just having it there, I think, would work out pretty nice. And then just generic Super Poly targets: Dragostapelia, Starving Venom, Mud Dragon. Anyone that plays Super Poly usually ends up playing those. They worked out. I didn't really go into any of them because it didn't matter in some of my matchups. Only matchup it would have mattered in is Invoked, but go figure. That's the one matchup I didn't see Super Poly in the entire match, so sucks, but happens. Rest of the extra deck, we do actually play non-fusions in here, and a good bit of them. We play Verte because we were playing Poly and Super Poly. Didn't end up coming up, but just having that option available to you, being able to Super Poly at any time you want, is hilarious. So you don't end up with just 2 monsters you're not using on the field too often, but just having Verte as an option is really nice. And Phoenix was the MVP in the Trap Trick matchup because fuck Mystic Mine, and we have to be able to out that if we want to be able to play the game. So that is how we did it one time. You got any problematic Floodgate or have to deal with Mystic Mine, then Phoenix it is. This actually ended up coming up, and I'm so glad I played that. I would not change that at all. And then, obviously, this deck has a lot of rank 8s, so we do play a small rank 8 engine. First of all, another hidden MVP of the deck. Dingirsu is hilarious. Forces out negations, and if it doesn't, you just send something on your opponent's field. Really handy for... nobody in my local is really playing Dragoon, but I mean, if you have something like a Dragoon problem, then, a non-target send is hilarious, and then the protection that Ding offers is just really great as well. That actually ended up coming up, so I would not change that. That ended up working out really well. And then the last 3 cards, just the constant threat of an OTK is really nice, so we play the Draglubion, Hope Harbinger, Numeron Dragon package. I would not change that whatsoever. What ended up sucking during one of the matchups is I would have won the game if I were able to go into this, but unfortunately I had activated Branded Opening during that turn previously, which locks you into fusions, unfortunately. So yeah, you can't really go into this when you're locked into fusions, which sucks. But I mean, just having this able to go into it and potentially win the game off of that, you can't go wrong with that. I wouldn't change this whatsoever in this particular build of the deck. That is the extra deck. On to the side deck. Side deck, it's completely up to you. Side for your locals or whatever event you're going to go to. But this side deck saved my life in some of these matchups. So first of all, a card that I figured out is great this format. Ghost Ogre. I slept on this card. I thought this card was bad. But did you know that hitting Map and Flunder is hilarious? And hitting Mo Yi and Sword Soul is hilarious? and then just getting something else of your opponent's field that they want to link off with is hilarious. Not to mention it's a light, so you can use it as fusion material. This card is low-key really, really good, and I changed this last minute before it was literally probably 5 or 10 minutes before the tournament started, and I decided to side deck this instead of something else. I am so glad I did that because that saved my ass in the tournament. I figured that there was going to be some back row matchups in my locals. So Denko it was. I have some other stuff in here, but Denko actually ended up coming in really handy. I think we had some Geist there at one point. I didn't end up going up against them. If I did, obviously I would have put this in. But fun fact, when your opponent has a bunch of traps set in their trap trick deck and you drop Denko Setka, they cannot activate them, and it is hilarious. So, you know, ends up working, was pretty nice. You do kind of want your normal summon for Owlbear, but I mean, if you have to pick and choose between shutting down your opponent's back row and, you know, using your own, then or going into Owlbear rather, you know, sometimes it's just better to shut down their back row and then wait till next turn to do it. Because, I mean, if you're shutting them off of their stuff more than you're getting your stuff rolling and it ends up working out, then, you know, you did your job anyway. So Denko ended up working out. I may change this for something else because, I mean, there's not much back row in my local, but, I mean, it's really handy. I may change it out for Lightning Storms, even though that loses to stuff like Order and Anti-Spell. But, I mean, it ended up working out. Plus, it's a light, so it can be potential fusion material. But, I mean, it ended up working out. I would have to think on it some more. But yeah, it was nice. This didn't really end up coming up much today, ironically, because of my matchups, but I would still keep 3 Dark Ruler in my side deck regardless, because it's just too good, this format. You kind of need it. If you're up against big boards that have a bunch of negation that you just can't deal with, you know, it sucks going up against Birds and Sword Soul. You just kind of need it. So it didn't really come up in my matchups, but I would not change this whatsoever because it's just too handy, this format. Speaking of back row hate, Evenly Matched is a hell of a card. I didn't end up seeing it today, but I would not change this whatsoever because this card is ridiculous, being able to banish your entire opponent's board. It's just too good. You know, you draw into it and you're like, okay, let's clear their board and then establish my own. It's great because you do not care about your battle phase in this deck because your goal is to put a bunch of Masqarade dragons on the field and burn them to death anyway. So, you know, clear their board, make your own. It's hilarious. I wouldn't change this. It didn't really end up coming up today, and if it did, I just didn't draw into it, but I mean, I wouldn't change that. Evenly is a hell of a card. And another card that is debatable, but I think performed pretty well regardless, is 3 Judgment. Same deal, I just didn't end up drawing into it as much as I would have needed it, but I mean, in the matchups that I put it in, if I'd have seen it, I mean, Judgment is just a hell of a card. I mean, you can't really go wrong playing this card in pretty much anything that you do. Yeah, I probably wouldn't change this. I may consider some other stuff, but I mean, Judgment, just going first, you just say no to whatever your opponent does. It's just hilarious. I wouldn't change that. So I'm glad I had that in, even if I ironically just didn't see it. But yeah, that's about how it went. Despia's finally did it, even if I got lucky in some matchups, but we take those. But yeah, that is the profile. I ran the Frightfur package in this, and I'm glad I did because it was hilarious. And yeah, we finally did it. That's about all I got for this. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good rest of the day.